So we're back down on the plot, and as you can see behind me, we've got the beds in place and some soil in them. So today it's time to get the plot operational, and we've planted some onion sets, we've got some garlic to put in, we want to sow some green manure, and then also, if we get a chance, we'll be transplanting some strawberries. So let's get on and get those onions in before the weather turns a little bit colder and it will become too late to actually get them in. Let's get over to the first bed and let's get those onion sets in. So I'm going to voice over this little bit because the wind noise was quite bad. So we're going to put our onions in. We've got two sets of onions. We've got some red onions sets to put in. I think those ones are Ocado onions, and then we've also got some white onions to go in, which are Shakespeare onions. And we've got about 60 of each, so we should be able to do about 5 rows by about 12. Now with onions, pretty straightforward. Flat end, pointy end. Flat end goes in the ground, pointy end out, so it's just out of the ground. So I'm just going to line gaps is about 25 centimeters across, and then each one of these, as I'm going to put in, is 10 centimeters apart. And I'm just using my hand as a guide here because I know that the width of my hand is about 10 centimeters, so I can just space those along all the way. The soil's quite soft here, so I can just push those in just so the tops are pointing out, and then we can do 12 along, and then we'll do the other rows. So we've got all our little onions in, and now it's time for the garlic. So let's look at the garlic side of things. Just stay still, camera. Okay. Let's just tilt you down a bit. So garlic, we've got some new garlic. And we've got some garlic cloves from our last year's batch, which is a sort of mixed bunch. These ones are Germador. Again, two ends of garlic, flat end, pointy end up. Now, let's talk about depth here, and depth. Now, how far should you put them in? I mean, onions we just put so that they're just, the tops are just sticking out. You can plant them right on the surface, you can plant them up to 6 inches deep. But the general rule of thumb, so which is best, the general rule of thumb is plant them deep enough that they're not going to rot. So if you've got very heavy soil that's prone to flooding and getting very damp, put them close to the surface. If you've got nice light soil like we've got here, you can put them a lot deeper, up to, some people put them up to 6 inches. Now these beds are they're 20 centimeters, so about, in total the soil in here is probably just over 6 inches deep. Now we do know that this area does, because it's got clay underlay, if you like, right underneath the surface, go down about 9 inches, and then you get loads and loads of clay coming out. So we know that actually during heavy rain, the base of these beds will be quite wet. So we're going to put them down about halfway. So by my reckoning, halfway is about, if I hold on to it and push it down until the soil's up to here on my fingers, that's about 3 to 4 inches. So I'm going to put them in there. Again, we're going to use about the same spacing. So we're going to push that down in so it's down there. Okay, so the important thing in here is to remember, so what we're going to do, because unlike the onions, as you can see some of these already started to sprout in the bag. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay them out first of all, and then we're going to put them in, because once we push them in, it's pretty hard in some of the soil to know exactly which ones you've put in, which ones you haven't. So let's lay them all out first, and then we'll push them on down through. So again, spacing wise, about the same as onions. You can give them a little bit more. The more space you give them, the bigger the garlic will be.
generally speaking, so they're not fighting for as much nutrition. So what we're going to do is we're going to space them like this, because we don't want massive garlic cloves. We'd rather have like sort of, when we come out from it, we'd rather have garlic that's like this. We planted some quite far away from each other last year, and you end up with, as you can see, comparison bulb that's that sort of size. And generally speaking, these are more useful because you can always use 2 or so in a recipe, but when you've got a massive bowl like this, what you tend to do is you tend to use some of it and then waste the rest. So there we go, that's that. And now you see the reason why I've got these beds. They're 1 metre 20 long wide, and one of the reasons for that is that when I'm planting this garlic up, what we'll do is we'll move these ones down so all the new ones are in the same rows. So when you're actually doing stuff on this bed, you can reach from one side to the middle without having to stand on the soil. There we go. So we'll get all those laid out. So we're going to get all these laid out. And then we'll push them in. Might just squeeze another one just in the end there. So put some of the smaller ones at the ends. Okay, we've still got some more which we'll move over into the next bed. So, as I said, once you've got them, just get them, hold them on the top, push them down in. And then what we're going to do is, once we've done all these, because we're a bit later in the season, getting these, well, not so much the garlic, but certainly the onions, we're going to just put some fleece over it, just to keep it warm and also to stop any of the birds dragging them out. I'm not quite sure why the birds do it. I think they just think that these little bits up here look a little bit like worms, and they just end up just dragging them out, thinking that there's a nice meal there. So what you end up is that all the onion sets end up with all over the place and not in the soil. So we'll get some fleece over those. And what we're going to do is just, once we've planted those in and we know where they are, we'll just lightly brush over the soil just to cover them up. So the idea behind is we've got, like, seems a lot of bed space for onions and garlic, but these will be coming out in the early part of the season, so that will free up the beds for some later brassicas. So one of the things that we've been very poor at in the past is actually succession planting, partly because that's poor planning on my part, and the other reason is that we grow all our seedlings on in the polytunnel, and what that means is that once the polytunnel's got tomatoes in it and everything else, There's not a great deal of room for succession sowing in there, and it all gets very cramped and clustered up in there. So there we go. There we go. Right, so that is where we finished. So let's go and get a stick. I think we did put one in there, so we'll move that over to here. And then we'll say that collect these sticks up. And we'll just leave that on the bed just to know where we finished with the garlic. As I was saying, I've not had a great deal of space to do loads of extra second sowings once our polytunnel's in use. But hopefully now we've got the second plot and we'll have a greenhouse and we'll have a polytunnel. The idea is to grow in the polytunnels and then use the greenhouse for sowing seeds. So that way we can sort of get, 6 broccoli plants going, get those in. A couple of weeks later, sow 6 more.
So it's time for another bit of voiceover because the wind noise again was pretty bad. So I'm just discussing the fact that we've got 4 beds left over. So we've got nice soil in there. So what we're actually going to do is we're not going to be using them. So we're going to be planting some green manure in here because it's all nice and fluffy and lovely soil. And we don't want all the rain to come down over the winter and wash all the nutrients out. So we're actually going to be planting some trefoil and for sampler green manure. So one's a nice purpley flower, the other one's a nice yellow flower. We'll sow that into those beds, and once that's sown, it will grow. And before in the spring, when it actually just before it starts to set seed after it's flowered, we'll then chop it all up and rake it all in.
So this Phacelia that we're putting in here is not totally winter hardy. If we do get a reasonably hard frost or hard freeze, once it's grown, it will kill it off, but hopefully not before we've had a little bit of growth out of it that we can dig in. One of the other benefits obviously of sowing this is that it'll keep the soil structure reasonably good and hopefully stop some of that soil and nutrients washing away. So in this bed, just turn you around a bit. We're going to sow the trefoil. Trefoil, it sounds a bit like trifle, doesn't it? There we go. So once we've got that spread out, we'll just give it a good light rake over. And that should be good to go. Okay. So down here we're just going to lightly just brushing the surface really, just trying to make sure that all the seeds have got good contact with the soil. Don't really need to do much more than that, just so they'll germinate. Now we're hoping that the next few days it's supposed to be like about 16 degrees temperature wise, and that will be enough to actually get the, especially with the soil, if we get a bit of sun as well on the soil, because the soil's nice and dark, that'll be enough to get them germinated before you start getting a bit colder the following week. But time will tell, time will tell. So on to the next job, which is the strawberries. And we have the strawberry plants planted underneath the grapevine, and this is what it looks like now. As you can see, it's they've sort of grown all the way down on the floor here, all into the raspberry beds, all around the back there, and literally they've just climbed out of here on runners and gone all the way down. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here, we're going to hoik out some of these plants that have grown down into the bark and some of the runners, and we're going to put those in one of the beds over the side. So, come back from the fruit cage, and what we've got here is like a pile of what looks like strawberry weeds. But we've just pulled out some of the runners and stuff on this, so what we're going to do is separate these off from their parent plant and put those in here. So, just going to go through here and look for the strong ones. It's just a tangled mess of runners in there got a bit out of control, so it's just a tangled mess of runners and strawberries really. So there's quite a nice little plant there. So just going to sort through here, pick off the ones that have got a reasonably good root system on them, and get those planted up ready for next year. Now it's probably, I have to say that it's probably a little bit later than I would have liked to transplant these strawberries, but the beds weren't ready, so what can you do? So whether we'll get a decent crop off of these next year still, I don't know. We shall have to wait and see. So it's just sort of spacing these. I mean, strawberries need quite a lot of room actually. So we're sort of spacing these about a foot apart in a sort of square formation. So I'll put one there. You can see here there's a collection of lots of different ones. This one's still got strawberries on it. So what we'll do is we'll take those off, because we don't want it to take any of the dead stuff off. So we don't want it to carry on growing. So what we're looking for is, so this is one of the old ones, and actually probably fruited partly this year. So, but there's a good growth in the middle. So what we're going to do is just trim off that, give us a nice new plant that should grow quite well. And some of these, as you can see, they're all clumped together. So we're just going to separate out some of this to actually give us a slightly smaller plant. So ideally what we're looking for is like nice new growth that's got a good amount of, so here, the perfect one. So this is like new growth, so you can see it's all new. It's got really good root system on it. So just looking for any that are particularly strong. I mean, there's a lot in here that are not quite as strong and not quite as good roots, but as we've got plenty here, we can sort of pick and choose which ones we use. So this is another one that's, now up to now they've been sort of using their roots and feeding off their parent plant through the runners. But now that the weather has turned a bit colder, their requirements aren't quite as much, so they can actually concentrate on actually just putting new roots down ready for the new season. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a combination of slightly new ones, and also we're going to use a few more of the well-established plants as well to mix in between. So hopefully, even if the new ones don't produce a good crop, some of the more established plants may actually produce a better crop. So how are we doing? How many more do we need? Again, so this is like sort of one of the bigger plants along the line, so that should do us fine. So let's get these start getting these planted up and see how many more we need. So we're going to do about 3 across. Just plant those down to the depth they were before. So as I say, we're spacing these out about a foot either way. Actually give them plenty of room to actually expand out. Strawberry plants normally last about 3, maybe 4 years. Once they've gone past the sort of 4-year mark, they will still grow, but their fruiting days there'll be limited amount of fruit and not quite as abundant with fruit either. So what you need to do is every few years is replenish the strawberries that you've got, or rotate them round so that actually that sort of every year you remove about 1/3 of the old plants and put in 1/3 new plants. That way those new plants will have a chance to establish themselves, and they might not produce the best crop of that year, but they'll be there ready for the next year. And as you rotate round, it means that you've always got a mixture of 3-year-old, 2-year-old and new plants. So we need a couple more in amongst here. Let's find some, as we need a couple, let's find some really good ones. There we go. Absolutely perfect on this one. We'll have both of those. So this is what we're talking about. Nice new growth, nice root system on it. Again, not many leaves, but nice good root system on it. And again, what we'll do with this is once we've got these all in, that's a new strawberry bed. We will get some fleece over that. So put a couple of little hoops in, and we'll get some fleece over that to actually protect those over the winter and give them a good start and nice and warm while they bed into their new environment. And look, we still have, I mean, to be fair, if we wanted to plant strawberries, what we might do is cut some of these up and put them up by the top gate, because they're all good plants. They just need somewhere to go, but we haven't got enough room to plant 1 million strawberries, so we'll see if we can find those other ones a new home. Right, that's about it from me today. I'm going to get these beds fleeced over and pack up, but we've made good progress so far. The next job on the allotment is going to be to move the composters. So we've cleared the area where the composters are going to go, and we're going to move the composters from the bottom plot up to this plot. But we first need to empty those composters, and we're going to put that compost from our compost bins onto the old plot, and then once we've got those new composters in place, we can start clearing some of this other rubbish away, and we'll get the rest of the sheets off and think about preparing the ground there for things like the polytunnel water tank and the greenhouse. So until I see you again, stay safe, have fun.